A warm welcome and good evening, everyone. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome the students, faculties, and the invited delegates from the Office of Global Engagement and also from the Alumni Relations to this Fireside chat. Also, it's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Chang, the President-elect from Purdue University. And also, this session will be moderated by Professor Mahesh Panchagnula, Dean of Alumni and Corporate Relations. I request the guests to take the seats on the stage, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good to have you all here. It's my delight to introduce Professor Mung Chiang. Professor Mung Chiang is the President-elect of Purdue University and the Roscoe H. George Distinguished Professor of Electrical and Computer Engineering. From July 2017 to June 2022, he was also the John A. Edwardson Dean of the College of Engineering at Purdue. Since April 2021, he has been the Executive Vice President for Strategic Initiatives. As the engineering dean, he led the college to its first back-to-back top 4 graduate rankings in the US, while growing it to be the largest top 10 undergraduate engineering college in the country. As the EVP of the university, he worked with many colleagues to help launch the initiatives in national security technology and in semiconductor and life science manufacturing in the Discovery Park District's aerospace cluster and the Lab to Life platform, and in economic growth through federal, state, and private sector opportunities. Delight to have you here, President Chang, President-elect Chang, and we'd love to hear your opening thoughts.
Thank you so much, Mahesh. Great to be here.
Thank you.
And I would say Baller Up, as Mahesh,
Yes.
as some of you know, is one of our distinguished alumni here at IIT Madras. Thank you for hosting, and it's a great honor for me and also my Purdue colleagues in this delegation to visit Chennai today and IIT Madras. And thank you to those students and faculty participating in real time right now, and to those who might be watching this based on the recording camera looking at me right now. And I'll try to be careful in what to say. Given my jet lag at this moment, we'll see how that goes. But I have to say I'm extremely impressed by the ingenuity and impact of the IIT Madras faculty, students, alumni, and your corporate partners. And this is my first time to have the honor to visit Chennai and IIT Madras. I visited India several times before, wearing my entrepreneur hat, wearing my professor hat, wearing my Purdue Dean of Engineering hat before, but first time to this part of your great nation. And I've heard a lot of wonderful things about IIT Madras before, ranked number 1 in India. That's truly impressive. Some extremely brilliant and industrious students here, along with their faculty. I've heard from my colleague, Vijay Ragnuthan, who is an alum here from 22 years ago. This might be one of the classrooms that you took certain courses from. Brings back all the, I guess, nightmarish memory of all the homeworks and the due days of projects, just like the students sitting here right now, 20 some years after you. But I've heard a lot of great things about IIT Madras. And still, I was blown away today within a short span of few hours by your director's vision, by the impact of the startup companies we saw at the research park, by this collaboration between industry and academia right on the outskirts of your campus, and certainly by the very beautiful campus as well. And I've seen more monkeys and deers on this campus than I've seen anywhere in Indiana. So from Indiana to India, this is extremely important relationship to us. As President-elect of Purdue University, is my hope and intent to not only continue, but to intensify significantly further the India-Purdue partnership in all of its dimensions, including working with IIT Madras when it comes to student mobility exchanges both ways. When it comes to dual degree, the letter of intent that just signed with your director is about a dual degree arrangement, starting with semiconductor degrees and diploma programs. And it's about research collaboration and faculty interactions. A lot of our faculty, some of them are alum of your institute, have spent sabbatical time here and would like to see even more of those. But it's also about having a holistic approach, whether it is the OVDF program for doctoral students sponsored by SERB, India equivalent of NSF, I was told, where Purdue is the host for the SERB program in the United States, all the way through undergraduate exchange programs and everything in between, master's, PhD. And the doors at Purdue is open to the students from IIT Madras. So you or your friends, please let them know tonight that whether you are going to visit us for 6 months, 3 months, or you would like to participate in a dual degree, or you would like to pursue a PhD degree at Purdue in engineering, in business, in computer science, and so on. And later I can brag even more about those programs at Purdue. I'll spare you that for the moment. Our door is very open to the brilliant minds at IIT Madras. So again, it's a great pleasure to be here. This is actually my first official trip as president-elect, and the only one this calendar year before I take on the official duty on January 1. And today is that first day. So it is special honor and particularly meaningful for me to take that first day of the first such trip to India, to Chennai, to IIT Madras.
Wonderful to hear that. Thank you, sir, for making this your priority.
Thank you.
I think you've communicated a lot by your action of making India your first stop as a president-elect and making IIT Madras your first stop within India. What are the broad priorities that you have set for yourself for the next, let's say 2 to 3 years that sort of drove you towards this thinking?
Yes. Well, Mahesh, under the sitting president, Mitch Daniels, who by the end of December will have completed exactly 1 decade of presidency at Purdue University, our university has been able to demonstrate you can get bigger and better at the same time. You can get excellence and affordability at the same time. And I know that's very important to all institutions of public education, whether it's in India or in America.
Yeah.
So Purdue was able to hold tuition frozen for the past 10 years, and we already announced 2 more years coming up. So a minimum of 12 years. And I assure you that it will be more than 12 years too. So that frozen tuition and frozen room and board for international students as well as for in-state, out-of-state American students has been extremely important to enhance student access. We also want students to be successful. We want excellence in how we teach and how we do research. We want to have excellence in the impact. We want excellence at scale. And another part I think we'll continue to do in the next many more years is what I call the co-generation of 3 things: generating talents, careers, and knowledge at the same time. Take semiconductors as one example. We, over the past few months, launched a whole semiconductor degrees program. Bachelor degree, associate degree, or diploma, master degree, PhD degrees, online residential across the entire semiconductor food chain. So we're talking about design of chips, making chips, packaging chips, along with all the tools and chemicals that goes into the life cycle. Integrating all these different departmental knowledge together into one single set of degrees in this program, which is directed by BJ now. Now, that is about creating the talent pipeline. The most important supply chain is talent pipeline. But at the same time, we're also bringing companies, just like what you are doing here with your research park. So just within the past summer, we got MediaTek, a design company, to open a design center at Purdue on our campus, something like yours, where we have a brand new building called Convergence, sitting right next to the student dorm, where companies big and small can create their own offices there. And then we announced with Skywater Technology, that they're going to build a 1.8 billion US dollar semiconductor fabrication facility. So now we are creating not just jobs, but careers. And people can come here, develop their talent, and stay here because there are meaningful, exciting jobs and lifelong careers waiting for them. At the same time, creating knowledge. So Purdue is one of, I would say, top three. I'm biased, but I think top three semiconductor research epicenters in America. We have 35 or so professors working on everything ranging from brain-inspired computing to chip design in general to heterogeneous integration, 3D packaging of chips. And the way they are doing these national level centers of research is going to use technological innovation to redraw the economic equations. I know that India, under your prime minister's leadership, is seriously looking at how India, as a powerhouse of technology of all kinds, can also onshore some of these fabrication facilities, some of the packaging facilities, and related industries. Well, take packaging. It's so far the more labor-intensive part of the whole food chain. How do we use innovation automation to reduce the dependence in your economic equation on cheap labor and more on the speed at which you can use software and hardware innovation to derive higher value and margin, right? That is a business equation, but technology can perhaps revolutionize the economic equation.
Add a multiplier in some sense. Technology.
Add a multiplier, changes. Let's say automation reduces your percentage of the total cost on labor.
Sure.
And that would change the equation of when onshoring is viable or not.
Sure.
So we would like to continue to co-generate talent, careers, and knowledge, very much like what IIT Madras has been able to do successfully.
I see a convergence of a broad vision, and your strategic initiatives align well with some of the things we're doing at IIT Madras as well. Let's switch gears and talk about the broader Purdue University ecosystem. It started in 1869. I'm an alumnus, as you mentioned, Mung. The university I've found, not just during my time, but during, in conversations with dozens of graduates who were there with me and after and before me, that it put the student front and center in their whole equation. The university is built around students. This, I will say, is not true of many of the other top universities, in some sense, that there are other pursuits that may overtake a student's own interest. So tell us a little bit about what you have done to keep the students still in the center of the whole equation as you've scaled up. And especially, please talk a little bit about your online initiatives, and how one could think of bringing the Purdue culture of putting the student in the center while going online and scaling up.
Well, thank you, Mahesh, for remembering the founding year of your alma mater accurately. Yes, indeed. It's been 153 years where Purdue has been able to, as a public university, offer higher education at the highest proven value to so many students, as President Mitch Daniels would say. And let me answer both of your questions. One is to describe Purdue student population as a whole, and two, highlight some of the innovation in how we are venturing into online learning. Now, so Purdue actually is a system of multiple universities. Most of us would think of it in our cursory understanding of Purdue as West Lafayette, Indiana, which is a beautiful, safe college town 1 hour north of Indianapolis, where Indy 500 happens.
I would have thought 2.5 hours south of Chicago. That was the airport reference I needed.
That's right. Well, by the way, we're going to have easier air transportation for future students as well. In that main campus, we have 50,000 students, 38,000 undergrad, 12,000 master PhD students. But we also have 2 other regional campuses in other parts of the state of Indiana. And then we are now opening our urban campus in Indianapolis with a quality that you can expect as a top tier, what we call AAU, the top group of research universities in America, with the same quality as that AAU quality as you expect from West Lafayette. And then we have an online campus for bachelor degrees primarily, and some additional master, even JD law degrees. Primarily, however, for those who are seeking first-time undergrad degrees online, called Purdue Global. So altogether, we have 110,000 students in the Purdue system. About half of them are on the main campus. Now, I'm proud to say that on that main campus in West Lafayette, Indiana, we have Indian students now this year becoming the largest source of international students. We have about 2,800 Indian students, including many hundreds, I don't know exactly how many, but many hundreds, I'm sure, from IIT Madras. So in particular, we have over 800 undergraduate students from India. They finished high school in India, and then they went to Purdue to pursue a bachelor degree. And no other university, I'm told, in America today has more undergrad students from India than Purdue, period.
Wow.
And then we have many, of course, master and PhD, especially in engineering, in science, in business, along with other colleges. We have outstanding agriculture, for example, outstanding pharmacy college, among others. So we're immensely proud of the Indian student pipeline. And my hope today, tomorrow, and in all future days would be to see that number go up even further, and to see very high quality students from India coming to our, especially to the graduate program, hopefully a lot from IIT Madras. Now, switching to your other question, how do we keep innovating with students at the center? And these days, students come in both residential and in online ways. So indeed, we put West Lafayette campus online postgraduate, so master or master level certificates, as a key priority, at least in the College of Engineering and now throughout the whole university over the past few years. The numbers already speak for themselves in some sense, that we've got the number one ranked in America online master programs in electrical and computer engineering, in mechanical engineering. Number two, in civil, online civil engineering. Our numbers of students increased in some cases tenfold in the past 3 years. And our students, many of them in this case, they already got a bachelor degree. They would like to get a master degree or a certificate while working full-time as a professional in a company such as a Boeing, a Microsoft, a Intel. And we are developing and delivering these online master level courses and credentials to now thousands of students in engineering alone, and across the whole university, much more than that, with high quality, through innovation in pedagogy technology combo. By that, I mean, for example, using machine learning to help human learning, AI analytics to help individualize content delivery. For example, virtual labs, including virtual semiconductor fabs, so that you can remotely get almost as well as you would in person the educational experience in lab courses. So we're innovating the way we deliver these online content by virtual labs. And that, I think, will go a long way in answer your question, Mahesh, in, again, putting students at the center, in this case, online students at the center. It's not just about large number of students, but also ever increasing graduation rates, and understanding online learning is not always as easy as residential learning.
Sure.
So how can we use technology to use it not only as just a distribution of content mechanism, but truly use modern technology and update our pedagogy, how we teach online, to put students online in the center of our online strategy.
Wonderful. That sounds like a winning formula in many ways. And Purdue has always lived up to its expectation of being not just being student-centered, excellence-driven university in the United States. Let's talk a little bit about the global education scenario. if there's one thing the world of online learning has taught us, especially during COVID, is that passports and visas have no meaning. So, and you've had a very distinguished, what we call in cricket as a first innings at Princeton, okay? And then you've come to Purdue and you've excelled in your many roles at Purdue. From your vantage point of having seen global education evolve, I would like you to comment on, where the world of education is going. What's the role of a university? I want to more specifically put some data in front of you. In the year 1900, 7 of the top 10 universities were German universities. In the year 2000, 8 of the top 10 were American universities. So as we move forward, what do you see the world of education delivering in terms of value, given that there is a ton of information for free available on the web? What's the role of a university, and how do you see that vision sort of segueing into your own strategic initiatives during your term?
Well, first of all, I need to learn more about the cricket terminology. But I assume that you are referring to my starting out my career as a researcher, as an educator, as a faculty member at Princeton for 14 years, indeed. And over the past 5.5 years at Purdue, I guess mostly as an administrator, I do keep a tiny bit of my research alive, diminishingly small fraction of my time, though. So I guess I've been sucked into the dark side. I don't know if there's a cricket analogy of that, but however, you brought up a very interesting point. Higher education has evolved in many ways over the past hundreds of years, I guess at least 800 plus years. And American universities, I think, went through a few critical junctures of pivot point. One is, just borrow from the British system and the liberal arts education. And then a lot of American universities, including, say, around that time, University of Chicago, Stanford, Hopkins, those were the young universities around 1900, learned from the German university model. And a lot of the research excellence intensity came as a result of that. And then around the end of World War II, two major things happened. One on learning, one on knowledge discovery. On the learning front is the GI Bill. So the veterans get a chance to go back to study and back to campus. It's a win-win formula for many reasons.
Sure.
And the other is what Vannevar Bush published this report to the government in Washington, D.C. called Science, the Endless Frontier.
Yes.
And in fact, recently there's an American bill passed by Congress, originally named the Endless Frontiers Act. Now it's called the CHIPS Plus Act. So those two things happen around the same time and fundamentally transformed. So, and that brings me to the question that you were asking. And I believe that, first of all, there are different kinds of universities. In America, there's over 4,200 of post-high school learning institutions. They don't all fit the same mode. Some of them are very much on two-year education. Some are much more on trade school. Some are research-oriented. But let's just zoom into one segment where Purdue belongs.
Yes.
As a large public research university. And for such institutions, I think that there are two fundamental missions here. One is we ought to uplift people's lives by giving as many as possible a chance to, through education, to change their lives.
Sure.
And that's transformative to individuals and their families. It's transformative to your neighbors. It's transformative to the entire society in your country, and maybe other countries even. So that uplifting people's lives through the power of public education, that spirit is part of Purdue's DNA. The other, simultaneously, thus one of the challenges we have to face, because we want to also do the other part, which is to have fundamental research breakthrough through a competitive process, such as NSF funding, such as internal tenure review process, that will then lead to a accumulation of discovery, part of which Doesn't have to be 100%, but part of which then in turn translates into knowledge-driven innovation, economic growth. So Purdue has been able to, throughout the past 153 years, to uphold both ideals. On the one hand, change people's lives through the power of education. On the other hand, keep discovering new knowledge, and some of which we trust will be then translated into impact. I give you one data point. Purdue University ranked number 6 in the patents provided by the U.S. Patent Office to any university in the world. And if you discount those with medical schools or those with one system of 9, 10 different universities bundled as one,
Sure.
then actually Purdue is number 2 in the U.S. in patent generation, right after MIT. And that's just one reflection out of many possible reflections of that power of discovery back to society. So how do we make sure that we keep both? That we're going to keep uplifting people's lives while at the same time keep making fundamental discoveries with impact. That is what I think Purdue will be able to continue to do, and a lot of American public research universities as well.
So you think the role of a university those two will remain sort of fixed constants in the role of a university going forward. And as we then evolve the rest of the ecosystem around it, for example, I know Purdue was one of the first universities to open in-person classes when COVID happened.
Yes.
There was, I'm sure, a role that technology played in enabling that. This was even pre-vaccine, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
And so the whole thought process that goes into enabling a good learner-centered growth for each individual student while enabling research and discovery for a faculty member's pursuits and for the society at large. As we assume that these two remain constants, how do you see the role of the overall societal ecosystem? For example, in India is a country that has firmly embraced the idea of education for a family's economic growth. I mean, we're a little bit like some of the other Asian societies where we believe that education is a non-negotiable in the family, right? So how do we position a university, as almost a non-negotiable in the politicians' minds? Because, as we say, this is front and center for society's growth. And so it becomes important that we also position this in the lawmakers, in the decision makers' minds. What are some things we could do as faculty members and to sort of enable that conversation to be more proactive?
Well, I think that whether it is tax dollars or is private
Yes.
funding, people will naturally ask for ROIs, return on investments. And investment comes in different forms, and return also comes in different shapes.
Yes.
And we should also recognize that a country needs different kinds of post-high school education.
Yes.
It doesn't all have to be the same. Just like in India, not all universities need to be like IIT.
Yes.
In America, not all universities are AAU top research universities. And we recognize that they all serve a certain purpose. You can have a 2,000 student liberal arts undergrad education institution as well, next to this 50,000 one campus university at the same time. And that's a choice for students and parents to make.
Yeah.
But back to your fundamental point about how can we persuade those in governmental powers, legislators, right, or those in administrations, to persuade them that, yes, have a diversified investment portfolio. Yes, invest in different ways, but you got to recognize there is this huge return on investment.
Sure.
Sometimes people I've seen quantify this by looking at the tax dollar that could be generated, by looking at the new companies that can be formed or brought from overseas through foreign direct investment because of the talent here. I'm sure India must have seen that. For example, your software talents is one key reason why
Sure.
so many American software companies set up branches and employ tens of thousands
Yeah.
of Indian nationals as their engineers. But there's also, I think, that elements of return on governmental and private sector investment
Sure.
in the sense of giving the next generation opportunities and dignity, especially if it's a public university, that it carries a certain mission as to say to the students, to the families who care about education, as you
Yes.
said, non-negotiable,
Yeah.
right? As non-negotiable as you would say bread and butter, or my kids would insist upon watching Netflix while eating dinner, right? They would say, this is non-negotiable, Dad. Everything else we can discuss and talk about it. No, this one you cannot take away my iPad showing Netflix while I'm eating dinner. So that non-negotiable nature of education in India, in so many families, that's such an outstanding starting point,
It
right?
is.
Whereby the government got to recognize that what this means to the dignity of these individuals, these young men and women, as they grow up.
Yes.
So, I certainly applaud how the government in India has been very supportive of creating more campuses in the IIT system, right? Expanding the enrollment from undergrad to master and PhD processes,
Yeah.
and giving people a chance to fully realize their each individual potential.
Wonderful. I think we have a lot to learn from Purdue and the US university system at large, because I know that you are ahead of the curve. And we are only now seeing these questions being asked. What is your ROI? Given so many millions of hundreds of millions of dollars coming in. This has been a wonderful conversation. I think now is a good time to pause and see if any of the students here have any questions to ask.
No, thank you.
So maybe to get the conversation warmed up, I have a question as a student. I've been a student, as I said. One of the things we see with the process of applying to a U.S. university and getting there is that it's very competitive, which is good. I think that's the way it should be, and all good students have a chance at getting into a university. What are some benefits of being present on campus versus choosing an online degree? You have both on your offering. So if I was a student, what are the sort of things I need to think about as I choose between these various options?
Right, Mahesh, I think the core dual questions for educational sector today are, one, you talk about online. Is online learning effective at scale? Are people learning? How do you know they are learning? How do you measure? Are they graduating? And the other is, well, if online isn't effective, what are you doing about it? And if it is effective, then why do you still need a residential education?
Yes.
All right. Now, there's a lot that we need to do to actually deliver value on residential learning, especially as we continue to improve, as we hope we would, with online learning's efficacy. Then we're adding pressure back to our own selves on the residential learning's value proposition. Now, in some cases, people may say, well, that's because there is this passage of one's growth in that age range to become independent,
Yes.
to become a social human being that can work with others, live with others, independent of one's parents, and wash your own laundry and go hungry if you miss the time to eat, right? So there's a lot to be said about that. And that is a value of residential something, whether you are learning in a university or not, that's useful. So happens to be in a university setting, all right, that's fine too. So there's part of that. And there's a big part, I think, is about that, actually.
Yes.
It's learning how to become an independent human being. And university giving you a social context to do that. Whether you go to, it's about the cricket ball or the football, games, you're part of a community. Let's not underestimate that value. But I will hope universities provide more than that.
Yeah.
Right? it also does provide a learning opportunity. So, what is something special about residential learning? And I would imagine it has to do with learning as a team about skills that you cannot learn online. It's about doing research as an undergrad. In fact, we have this program called PURE, P-U-R-E, that is based on attracting IIT undergrad students to spend a summer on Purdue campus in Indiana to carry out undergrad research.
Yeah.
So that even as an undergrad student, you are learning hands-on in the lab with a professor. And to see if you would like to do that for a few more years as a PhD students. Maybe you don't. Well, it's also about how can you work on projects together, not defined questions and answers, but work on things with no definition of questions, let alone correct answers, and do that with a team.
Yeah.
Do that with problem-driven context. So a lot of those things, it is much harder, even with virtual lab, AI analytics, and attention oriented delivery for students. Even with all of those, it's hard to imagine those human interactions in those examples and more that can displace residential learning by online.
Sure.
But at that moment, you have to wonder, are you able to keep it open? So let me go back to an earlier question you asked about, Purdue was perhaps the first large-scale American university in 2020,
Yeah.
declaring that we're going to open the campus in August 2020. And this was declared by President Mitch Daniels in April 2020. Now, if you go back 2.5 years, it's great to see IIT Madras fully open this semester and open last semester in 2022. But go back to April 2020. It would be very natural to feel very scared and uncertain.
Yes.
And say, you know what? Perhaps the easy way to safety is to shut down.
Yeah.
Now, the easy way to safety is not the only way to safety, and it's not the best way to safety. A better way to safety is to try harder as a provider of education so that the consumers of education, you, the students, and your parents, can have a choice whether you would like to be here on campus or not. And work even harder to have a plan B as a contingency plan. If things indeed get out of control, we need to absolutely shut down, then how can we deliver it online? That means you got to work triply hard.
Yes.
Or quadruply hard if this is multiplication. I'm just using analogy mathematically loosely here, but that means you got to work hard to have all the cleaning protocol, all the social distancing, masking protocol, expecting student will follow that. You got to work extra hard to provide a plan B. In other words, you're delivering twice. We thank our faculty for doing that. We thank our students for following the protocols. But if everybody, starting with the top leadership, is willing to try extra hard, then we have a much better way to safety, whereby we have both safety and a choice so that the students can decide for themselves whether they would like to be here or not, rather than depriving them of the ability to choose. Yes. By telling them, nope, no one can show up. So I am, as you can tell, immensely proud of what Purdue University and President Daniels,
yes,
and all our faculty and students, without whom this daring attempt would not have been put off, was able to accomplish in utmost moment of uncertainty by saying, you know what, as Boilermakers, let's give it a try. And it turns out it worked. Maybe in an alternate universe, in a parallel universe somewhere, it would have been a different kind of virus and it wouldn't have worked and would have fallen back to the default plan B, right? The backup plan. But in this universe, it did work. And in hindsight, where clarity is much more obvious, we could see that what we did was basically to say it's an obligation, it's a duty for educators to try a little harder in order to give a choice to students.
Wonderful. You said quite an example, that has proven to be extremely wise and prudent actually in 2020 with 2020 hindsight. I think we now have a textbook model for what to do if God forbid there's another situation anything like this. Thank you very much, President-elect Chang. This has been a wonderful conversation. I enjoyed it thoroughly. Thank you for letting us into a little glimpse of your thought process that will go into shape this wonderful university. Go Boilers. Thank you very much again, sir.
Thank you, Mahesh. Go Butters, if you don't know, this is what we will chant at our sports events. Football, basketball, well, we call football, I guess we call what everybody else calls football soccer.
Yes.
But before I go, actually, I want to ask you a question, Mahesh,
Sure.
if I could.
Sure.
So, as a student of Purdue, PhD student in mechanical engineering, and now a longtime leading faculty and the dean at IIT Madras, what would you say would be a good reason for an IIT Madras student to consider visiting Purdue? Maybe just for one summer as an undergrad in the pure program, maybe as a visiting doctoral student, OVDP, DF program, or maybe, finishing undergrad here and go for a master there. What would you give as perhaps the top one or two reasons why an IIT Madras student who cares a lot about education, who doesn't fear competition, I understand that part,
Absolutely.
who are hardworking, brilliant, education-focused, oriented young men and women, they have a lot of choices of universities in America,
Yes.
Purdue being one of them. What would you say, with your biased Boilermaker viewpoint, they should go to Purdue and take a look?
Well, I'll actually give you the unbiased viewpoint because from my vantage point of being the dean at IIT Madras and before this being the dean of international relations, I've had the chance of visiting dozens of universities globally. I'll give you three reasons why I think any good student should consider Purdue. One is, like I said, a very much student-centered learning environment. Every professor there that I have talked to or that I've met considers the student the purpose for their day, not an interruption to their day. Second point, I will say the fantastic facilities that Purdue provides to a graduate student or an undergraduate interested in research. The open research environment is, I think, that you wouldn't find very easily available at many other places. And the third reason I would suggest going to a place like Purdue versus, I'll contrast, Midtown Boston, one of the leading universities in Midtown Boston on the banks of a river, is the idea of being in a small town, small university town, where everything around there is centered around the pursuit of knowledge. There is something to be said about the old land grant system of universities, where these enclaves of education sprouted up in the middle of nowhere. And I think they attract the best of talent, faculty and students. And so being in a little environment where you're not distracted by the urban pursuits around you is something I found valuable. I grew up in a big city here in India. I went to school here in Chennai. I'm a graduate of IIT Madras as well. But I'll say that, being in a small little town called West Lafayette with a wonderful sports program to get all the entertainment you need out of, and to be there just for the learning pursuit and to socialize and learn from your peer students is, I'll say, a great third reason for anybody to go to Purdue and to be part of this wonderful environment. I benefited on all three counts, and I'll recommend anybody that comes to me to sort of do exactly this.
Well, we're very proud of you, Mahesh, as well as other Boilermakers who are on the faculty at IIT Madras. And we hope that you will also be proud of your alma mater, including, now that our college ranking, graduate research ranking, thanks to our faculty and students' effort, is top 4 in the United States.
Yes.
one day our basketball team will make it to Final Four in the U.S. as well.
One day. I
Honor
certainly.
up. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.